Let's first focus on the search for a deal with the EU. Now, I'm joined by the chair of the Exiting the EU Select Committee, Hilary Benn, who has just returned from meeting the EU's chief negotiator, Michel Barnier, today, and also Alexandre Holroyd, who represents French people living in the UK for President Macron's party En Marche. Alexandre, you have been travelling with President Macron.
I have.
There seem to be some sort of mixed messages. He wants to make a special effort to keep the British close to Europe, and then other times it's all tough talk. What is his thinking on Brexit at the moment?
I don't think there are mixed messages. I think the messages have been very constant, actually, through the whole period. There's a real desire, and it's a desire which is shared by, at least on this trip, all the EU 27 politicians that we've met, to find a deal with the UK. But there is an iron-cast commitment to ensuring that that deal doesn't undermine the single market. And that's really the key position. The single market is based, it's an ecosystem, which is based on a set of rules. And whatever the deal is, it cannot undermine that set of rules, which all the member states, the 27, have all agreed they want to protect.
So can we be clear? Chequers, they've said no to checkers. Hilary Benn, they've said no to checkers, more or less, right? I mean, they're too complicated on the customs side anyway, right? I mean,
yes, Michel Barnier was very clear today in the interview he gave and in what he told us, that the facilitated customs arrangement, which is very complex, basically political construct to get around the difficulties in the cabinet, is not a runner, nor is a common rule book. And that creates the problem, because what does the Prime Minister then do? And one option is to say, okay, we'll accept that we'll need to stay in a customs union. And the other is what the European Union has said we're prepared to offer from the start, which is Canada. But all free trade agreements involve some checks at some borders, which brings us to Northern Ireland.
But can I just be clear? So checkers plus customs union, you don't think is on offer either, because the common rule book doesn't work for the EU?
Well, a customs union is on offer, but that is not something the government is prepared.
But if we wanted to sign up to goods, common rule book, and a customs union, you don't think that's on offer?
Well, it depends what would happen on services.
It
gets very complicated, because there are goods where the rules on services and the single market rules have to come into play.
Alexandre, if Canada came along and said, look, we'd like to have all your rules for all our goods, remove all the borders, and we'll be in a customs union, the EU wouldn't say, oh no, you can't do that, that breaks the integrity of the single market. That would be bonkers, wouldn't it? I mean, if Britain really made that offer, the EU should snatch that, shouldn't they?
The point here is that the Chequers plan is a great starting point for a conversation, and I think it's been recognised throughout the EU as a starting point for a conversation, and a good starting point for a conversation.
But what's the end of that conversation?
You cannot,
what is the end? Because you've already said no to it, and you said no to that, to the common rule book. So what is the end of that conversation?
There are a lot of options open in between, but there are things which don't work practically. For instance, it's very difficult in our world today, where your mobile phone, 40% of its value is services, to split services and goods. We're not selling chocolates either way.
So basically, checkers plus customs union, you're saying, isn't on offer. So what is on offer? Canada, if we give away Northern Ireland, because the Northern Ireland border needs to be resolved. I mean, Hilary, what is it? What are the options? What is the menu here from which our conversation is going to be making us?
Well, a starting point would be finally for the government to accept, which it should. We need to go and say we'd like to stay in a customs union, because it created this very complex construction in order to avoid having to do that, but it's not.
Doesn't solve Northern Ireland.
It's not going to work.
Doesn't solve Northern Ireland on its own.
It's
halfway to Northern Ireland.
It is halfway to Northern Ireland.
So what is on offer? What is on offer?
What, from the European Union?
Yeah. What is the menu of options?
They've said, look, if you wanted a customs union plus EEA, that would be okay. Right. And if you want to take Canada, well, then we can offer you that. That's what you can't.
Offer. You have to take Northern Ireland out of it if you go for Canada.
Northern Ireland's problem cannot be solved if you go for Canada, and that's why Canada is not an option, because all free trade agreements involve some checks on some borders.
Alexandre, is there any option, here's the question, is there any option on offer which allows Britain not to have free movement of people and allows Britain, of the United Kingdom, Northern Ireland and Great Britain, to remain one trading rule book zone?
So I think that the way to see it is the other way around. At the beginning of this process, both parties set a number of red lines, and if you follow those red lines to the very end, you end up with a set of choices. But in between those choices, if you were to give up some of those red lines, you would have to find a solution where, but the very important point here is where the obligations match the benefits.
Right. So
And that's the key point here. What you cannot have, what you cannot have is you cannot have the benefits of Norway with the obligations of Canada. That just doesn't work.
Really simple question. Is there any option, forget our red lines, if we gave up all our red lines, is there an option which allows us to say we don't want free movement and we don't want Northern Ireland to be a separate part of the UK for trading purposes? Is there any option? Canada, no.
No.
Chequers plus customs union, you've said, is not on offer. And the single market EEA option, customs union plus single market, has free movement. So you're basically saying you've got to either give up Northern Ireland as part of the UK economy, or you have to have free movement. Is that right?
Well, I think it depends on whether, because we haven't even asked, whether the EU would be prepared to do something on the subject of free movement. Because after all, they want money from us, not just the money we're paying for leaving, but the question of whether there might be continuing contributions. As recent events have demonstrated, they're going to want some kind of agreement on fishing rights.
Would Macron entertain anything on free movement? Because that must break the integrity of the single market, which you said is your red line.
The integrity of the single market is the main unifying factor of the 27 and the main sort of standpoint of the EU27. So that's clearly not going to happen. But in December, we proposed a backstop.
Just said it might happen,
in December, we proposed a backstop as a back option. And then we said to the UK, we said to our partners, if you find something better, if you find something more creative, come back to us. And we're willing to examine anything you propose. And so that's what we're waiting. But we do have a backstop solution that's been offered. And
do you remotely think, Alexandra, that the backstop, which involves a border down the Irish Sea, in which the EU's external border with the rest of the world is within the United Kingdom, with foreign officials, do you actually think that is a sort of a serious offer to the UK?
I think that's why it's a backstop. That's why it's a backstop. But the weight of the proposal lands on the UK. The UK has to offer a system which makes it work. And there is a backstop that we've offered. But we've said continuously since the very beginning, we're very open-minded about anything that you can propose which functions.
Gents, thanks both very much indeed.